Now that's a blues instrument. I'm so happy to be in this interview with my good friend and new brother, Jock Harmonica Webb. Welcome, Jock.
Thank you so much. Honored, honored, honored.
The way that you've come over to Jackson to work with us with Blue Monday, you're just part of the family, and I can't say enough, about your commitment to the blues and becoming a member with us and just joining us. So all I could say is you're welcome, my friend. Congratulations on being inducted into the Alabama Music Hall of Fame, first of all.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, Alabama Blues Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, you're correct.
I don't think I'm worthy, and I didn't think I was worthy, but, some of my mentors, Johnny Bundo Baldwin, Bobby Rush, Sam Lay, they encouraged me, hey, you have to understand who and what you are to this thing called the blues. And it's your responsibility to get as much of a platform you can to carry this thing farther. And that may help that to happen for you. And they told me, well, no, you're a blues man. You need to be in it. But, personally, when I start thinking about all those cats, man, Johnny Shine, B.B. King, them cats, those are the kings. Those are the blues men. The rest of us were recipients of the beauty of it. So that's just how I feel personally.
When did you first pick up the harmonica? When did that instrument just hit you so hard that you had to do something about it and pick it up and start playing it?
Well, I'm glad you said that I had to do something about it, because I picked a few of them up as a kid growing up. Somebody had one, I'd pick it up and slobber in it as a child and things like that, But back in 1991, when I first moved back to Birmingham, I lived in Boston for a while and I checked out a lot of music, but I did a lot of singing up north in the New England area. When I got back to Birmingham, I'd had a harmonica for about 4 or 5 years in my sock drawer. Didn't know which end was what, of course. And a good friend of mine, I have to give him props, David Moore, was a street musician here on the south side of Birmingham. And we talked about this or that because of our acquaintance, and he encouraged me to get it and bring it down and sit in with him, which I didn't know quite what that meant, other than I hope he don't ask me to try to play the harmonica. And so shortly after that, I met an old blues guy named Willie King, who was my first blues mentor. And he talked to me about my harmonica playing and said, Brother Jock is in you. It's got to come out you. I hear it in you. So you come on, start going with us. And so I traveled with Birmingham, George Conner, and Willie King for quite a while, trying to learn this thing. And at that point, whether I realized it or not, I just simply had to hold on to that. That was apparently part of me anyway. So that's where that comes from.
But it appears that you've been around blues men and women all your life. Is that true?
My entire existence in my community, Rosedale, right outside of Birmingham, all the shot houses and juke joints and liquor places, we were raggedy poor. A lot of times you didn't hang out with your cousins and buddies to hang out and play ball and everything with them. You might not have gotten nothing to eat that evening. So you go by those guys out there. There was always a good plate of food at a shot house or a juke joint. You get greens, you might get some turtle, you might get some duck, depending on what somebody brought out the woods that day for the shot house lady to cook. But yeah, and all these old blues guys, here again, Sonny Boy Williams, John Lee Hooker, and the likes of, they would hang out in that area because they know they were going to get a little something to drink. They were going to play a lot of music, and they were going to get some traveling change in their pockets. And that's been my entire existence. When you look at it, I've been around music my entire existence. The world traveler and incredible bassist, Mr. Cleve Eaton, jazz bassist, traveled with Count Basie, recorded with everybody from Lena Horne to Frank Sinatra, Lonnie Liston Smith, Wes Montgomery. I grew up with their kids. Bo Collins Berry, one of the Alabama top trumpeters, William King, who's one of the founding members of the Commodore and still active in the Commodores. I grew around that all my life. William King's mama was my kindergarten teacher and babysitter. He would walk me home every day. But I've been around it my entire existence. It's just one of those things where I grew up. But I didn't play an instrument. Matter of fact, never wanted to be a musician.
Well, I'm glad that you are. You brought up something very interesting, and that is the blues development in Alabama appear to parallel the development of the blues in Mississippi, because some of the names that you call are Mississippians. And so they had early relationships with each other. And I'm sure that both group of bluesmen, if you will, had that influence on you. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, where I grew up in Rosedale, it was all black owned and operated. As far as you could see, was black owned and operated back since the 40 acre and a mule proposition. People that were traveling through the region would go through there. They knew they were going to get a safe place to eat and sleep and whatever else they needed, because it was a black community, acknowledged as the black community back in 1893, one of the oldest African-American communities in the state of Alabama. But now with that said, all those guys coming through from Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, wherever they were going, they would come through that region. So the influences were there and they were deep. You know, that's just how it was. You know, even playing with some of the jazz guys and the R&B and soul guys, that all of that, I guess, kind of honed me in on familiarization with my instrument. You know, you can't play a box of rocks if you're not familiar with them. So playing all of those different music, including classical, and you know, I remember going to watch the Russian Symphony Orchestra downtown Birmingham at the Alabama Theater. All those kind of things helped me to better understand what this instrument is about, you know. And then that experience with all the old blues people, like I say, Willie King, Birmingham George Connor, Johnny Shine, Sam Lay, Bobby Rutch, Little Milton, Hugh, all those guys. It just, that's what made me realize this is my thing, and it's just part of me. It's kind of like, how can I not play blues if it's the blood that runs through my vein? The only way to not play blues, I have to drain the blood out of my body. Then the only thing left, putting it in the water. And that ain't gonna work.
Well, we don't want it to drain anywhere. The parallel with the blues in Alabama, I mean, it's the same, but, you know, in Mississippi, the blues was born in Mississippi, grew up in Memphis, and went international in Chicago. What was the progressive line to the big city from Birmingham?
Ooh, mercy. Well, I learned that people were coming to Birmingham that I didn't even know were coming here. I didn't know these people were coming here all the time because I guess I'd moved away and things like that. But they all were coming here. And because of that thing in Birmingham, I started getting calls to go to Memphis, to go to Chicago, to go to Virginia, Georgia, you know, like I said, Mississippi, Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas. I started getting the calls to come to those places. And it's kind of funny because everybody wanted to hear some Alabama blues. They wanted to hear some Alabama blues. When you start talking about blues, there are different dialects, no different than your accent. You might have a northern accent, Texas drawl, whatever. Everything has its dialect or a certain accent, but there ain't no difference in what the blues really is. It's a spiritual cleansing straight from the heart and soul of what is the earth. Therefore, it has to be in you. As Johnny Shine said also, is in you. It's got to come out of you. But not many people, I've learned this, not many people of the heart and soul for that spirit to show itself and get that cleansing. You know, and I always tell people about going to church. You send 100 people up there to the altar, black, white, old, young, you know, rich, poor. Out of that 100 people that's going to hear the minister's word, chances are not one of them would be of the heart and mind to receive that blessing and that sermon. People just don't understand how to cleanse themselves. It's just that most difficult to try to find a mate. If you're trying to find a wife, hey, stop looking. If that spirit of each other don't bring y'all together, it just ain't out there. It ain't out there.
Hey,
you know, it's one out there for you, but you have to be of the heart and mind and spirit for that spirit to show that and bring it to you. Blues is that thing. You know, do everybody have a soul? Absolutely. But how many people can free themselves and let that spirit come out? Not a lot. There's a lot of people play at the blues, mimic the blues. There's a lot of them exploit the blues. Most of them have no respect and understanding of it, period. There are a few that spirit exists within them, and they can free their mind and spirit to allow that thing to come out to be cleansed. And that's something, it's a serious thing. You know, I always think about Sunhouse presentation and documentary. Sunhouse said blues ain't no plaything. Now, he had his own perspective at what the blues was. Like most people, they got their own idea of what it is to them. But blues is the blues, and I don't care how you look at it, what perspective you go from, what angle you come from, what instrument you play. Even if you're playing, watch this now, if you are playing jazz, classical, bluegrass, country, or even hip hop, as I know it's hard to hear that, but even hip hop, it's not the genre of music that's the concern. It's that spirit that brings it out of you. See, we allowed ourselves to be so arrogant as the human species to think that we make policy on life. Life is going to exist whether the human species is in existence or not. We can be extinct. Life is going to exist. Blues is that thing. Regardless of what genre you're playing, it exists deep within that spirit of you that comes out to be cleansed. It might be painting on canvas the backdrop of the city. It might be in the cornfield. It might be for some rearing their children. That spirit, that's when you are your most, that's when the most of you come out to love your child. My doctor told me one time, Mr. Webb, I see how you are with all your nieces and nephews and you love children. But until you have your own, you'll never get that true understanding of what the spirit of love is all about. She was very correct. Once my son was born, oh my God, I'm a changed man, thank goodness. But that spirit, and the blues does that to you. Man, you get up there on that stage or wherever you are, in the closet, in the bathroom, wherever you are, and that thing hits you, as they say, them sanctified folk go to talking about what that Holy Ghost do to them. They ain't talking about nothing but the blues. They don't know it. We've been led to believe that that spirit only exists in the church. No, that spirit went into that thing and created the church. Them old juke joints back in the day when we were not allowed to congregate and do these things and worship. We created these places, and some of them turned out to be juke joints. Some of them grew into churches. People want to preach the spirit, the gospel, as they say. But we are restrained by our own imagination and understanding of life. We think just because someone called it the old sad, drug out blues, that's what it is. We don't make policy on life. We have to live according to life to find our peace and place in life. But who am I? I don't know nothing.
Oh, well, you've experienced that, and that's your interpretation of it. What I was trying to get to was that, take Mississippi, for example. During the Great Migration, we had people primarily to leave Mississippi and ended up in Chicago. People from Alabama, from what I've read, primarily moved north to Detroit. And they took this thing called the blues with them. And so there's a direct connection culturally with the people that left Alabama going to Detroit primarily. I mean, everybody went everywhere, but that's the migration pattern that was there. And I'm wondering, there was not a huge blues industry in Detroit back in those days, even though you had this pipeline coming from Alabama, primarily from Rosedale and from Birmingham back in those days. What do you think influenced that lack, if you will, of that kind of connection with the blues coming directly from people that moved from Alabama to Detroit, unlike Chicago, that turned out to have a humongous blues influence there?
Well, a lot of people see it in different ways. What I've learned, having experienced Chicago and Detroit and all those places, the blues is there. Even back when I was 18 years old and traveled to Detroit, the blues was there. I was that young man that, I had a liquor bottle in my back pocket at 16, 17 years old because I looked old. Not that I was an alcoholic. I just enjoyed goofing off like that. My point is, because I looked so old, I was allowed in so many different places. But that's where they played that blues. Yeah, in Detroit, when you look at the influence of Motown in Detroit, it was just absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
But Motown had to derive from something when you think about it. Motown derived from the blues. The soul music derived from what is called the blues. They start calling it soul. They call it R&B. They call it all. It was all that users. They called it. See, all these, what I consider as erroneous titles, were put on these different, as they say, genres of music. And so many of them were created. More and more you hear, okay, hip hop and all neo soul and all of this. More and more genres are created. When you want to go back to the basics, it's still the same. That's the difference from getting a steak off a cow, and somewhere down the line, somebody decided to use the byproduct to make a hamburger. You understand?
Yeah.
That's where it all come from. The blues, if you want to call it that, was the steak. Matter of fact, quite honestly, it was the grass that nurtured the mother cow to have that calf where you keep getting your steak from. It's the earth. That's where it all come from. So rather than say the blues is the steak, I better go back and say the core of the earth, the center of the spirit, that's the steak of it. And the rest of us eating hamburgers.
Well, that brings up this other topic too.
But the Motown sound had to start from somewhere. From my experience, the blues was always there. You just didn't hear about it as much as you did Chicago, because here again, Motown was an incredible influence on the music industry worldwide. But it doesn't mean the blues wasn't there. Chicago and a lot of the migration north, for a lot of people was the economics. They knew they could get a better and more fair opportunity up north. A lot of the blacks, starting with organization of factories like Henry Ford, and how hey, if you can do the work, we gonna pay you, and I don't care what color you are. So a lot of that started around Henry Ford and all those different people. But now, Chicago, there was economic opportunities. A lot of these old folk could come out of the field making pennies a day, go to Chicago, make a living, and play that blues too. So all that come in, But you have to look at it from so many different angles, because it wasn't one thing that influenced all these things and folks moving from Alabama to Chicago and all these other places. It was a host of things that created that migration, not just Jim Crow and all those other things. Yeah. Well, let me back up. Jim Crow played a major role. All these different things played a major role. When you are black and you breaking your back, working sun up to sun down, and getting nothing, your family's still starving and being treated miserably. But you can go up north, even if you have to walk it or however you're gonna get there, and making an honest living for your family, then bring your family up. Yeah. Blues traveled that way for a lot of different reasons.
Oh yeah, the backbone of all of the music, of course, was centered around the blues. And even in the blues itself, we talk about traditional blues, Robbie, Tommy Johnson, Lead Belly. Then we talk about electric blues, which is played with electric guitar, B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf and those guys. Where do you think the blues is headed to now? We see the new influences of the blues in the blues that come from the younger artists that use the electric guitar, and they are dependent upon the historical perspective that they got from the Robert Johnson, Tommy Johnsons of the world that played the acoustic guitar. Where do you think the blues is going next?
Well, if I got something to do with it, it's going back to the roots.
Okay.
But it's not just me, it's a host of people. There's several blues movements that have started in recent years, because people are horribly insulted when you start declaring Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray, and those folks as the saviors of the blues and the grandest blues guitar players and all this foolishness. And people don't understand, it's all about commercialism and popularity. It's all about racism still. And I don't care what you say, it's still all about racism when you're talking about the blues. And I ain't got no problem with calling out different names. I'll tell you that about me. But my point is, when you look in Mississippi, Keith Johnson and Big Muddy Blues Band, all of those young brothers are in their 20s. They're in their 20s. They're educated, productive members of society, but blues is in their vein and it's in their future. They're going to play that blues. They're playing real blues, not that wash bucket, washed out stuff, whitewashed stuff. They're playing blues. When you come over to Alabama, young Nigel Spates and a host of others. They're playing that blues. Those guys play acoustic as well as they play electric guitar. You go on over to Georgia. You got Sean McDonald, who's a teenager still. John Tavius Willis in his 20s. You understand? There's a host of others over there. These young folk are playing that blues. Go on up to St. Louis if you wanted to. Marquise Knox. He is still in his 20s. There are a lot of people, I hear them talk about it. I ain't no young black folk playing no blues. But that's what you want to tell yourself because that's what you want to believe. And you still want to believe that the Rolling Stones and those guys, Stevie Ray and them, are the saviors of the blues. But you don't want to look at the economic factor. Rolling Stones and those guys appreciated and respected the blues. They simply wanted an opportunity to play with Muddy and Howlin' Wolf and those guys. They wanted to get that experience, whereas the American general public and society pissed on those old blues guys. Well, the European and the British appreciated them and worshiped them. But now how it affected Europe compared to how it affected America are two different things. Europe worshiped them. The American hypocrisy was finally able to bring white folks in their house playing blues. Let me put it a little more simple. If you got Little Richard playing rock and roll and Elvis Presley mimicking a Little Richard song, who is white society gonna bring into their house and show mom and daddy about their new music? They ain't bringing Little Richard. They're gonna bring Pat Boone. I heard one documentary talking about how well Pat Boone sang the blues. Oh my God, how well he does rock and roll. You know, all these people stole and exploited so much. Now, take the record producers that got Elvis Presley. Well, they helped bridge the gap to get black folk more money. No, they saw an opportunity to put that rock and roll into more homes. They saw a young shaky leg white guy that was trying to sing rock and roll, and they knew they could sell more of his album than they could Little Richard and Bo Diddley now. So when folks talking about the popularity, no. White society tried to take and exploit it to their liking. But it still goes back to, you cannot grow apples if you take a tree from its roots. You got to leave it on its roots. The blues ain't going nowhere. It don't need no damn savior. How you gonna save what saved you? And that's the relationship you start finding with the blues, what they call the blues and what now they call the church and the gospel. They're one and the same, but you got to take away the erroneous titles and names. You got to go back to what it was. I use my buddy Vic Moulton's word all the time. It's the truth. The blues is the truth. Here again, like he said, it should have been called the truth, not the blues. But that's the same people. Watch this now. The same people that took black folks, call them niggas and monkeys and spear chunkers. Those are the ones that put all these different names and titles on the culture. You understand what I'm saying? So you're not going to have them to call it the truth, because now they got to bring all the truth out. Now let's go back. We raise hell because the truth of black history or African-American history in this country has been alive since its existence. Since its existence, we were subhuman. That's to show where why should we treat them like human? And they're not really human. They got tails like monkeys. Okay? Yes, white America told a lie about black history. But white folks live in that same lie about their own history in this country. To tell the truth about white history, you got no other choice but to tell the truth about black history. It's a big lie, and we all have to clean it up. Yes, if I got something to do with the blues, it's going to stay real. Blues is going to stay truth. And there are many people, Sammy Blue over in Atlanta, Tony Bryan over in outside of Atlanta, fellow on Facebook called himself Mo Brooks. His name is Terrence Brooks. So, but there are a group of people that are sworn and just dedicated to this sacred culture called the blues. Because for most of us black folks, that's who we are. So why would we abandon it? In the words of most white Americans and some blacks, black folks didn't abandon their culture. I'm still talking about the blues now. See, blues is just as much as the story and the life, more so than it is about the music. This is just something to throw on the shelf or whatnot. No different than a guitar, just another piece of furniture just throw in the corner. But now, when you start looking at how the Black culture was defamed and spat on from our existence, by the time we got on that slave ship and got over here, we were worthless. We were nothing. Is what the world was told about us. We were nothing. All right. Now, growing up 300, 400, 500 years on this continent, that's all you've heard. That's all you've been told. That's all you've been taught in the history book. We would read no Alabama history books in elementary school. All I knew about the Black heroes was Joe Louis, and they made him out to be a womanizer and a drunk. But I didn't hear mostly about George Washington Carver and Booker T. Washington and all these people. I didn't hear about them. Of course, my school was less than 1% Black during the time, so maybe
right.
That was. But now, when our history has been defamed by those other than us, and all we've been led to understand and have knowledge of is the white way of living, to the point of where our educators were educated to the white way of living. Our theologians were educated to the white way of worshiping. Now, ain't nobody remembering how the British colonized South Africa to coerce and control the Blacks over there and told them that their own technique or way of worshiping was witchcraft. You understand? It was all defamed. Ain't nobody trying to tell the truth because they want to control this, that, those, and the other. So when you start looking at the history of the blues, when you start looking at the shambles that this country is in now, the only way you're going to get it back in order is get back to the roots. For me, it's blues and the true culture of who we are and what we are. And I don't care what color you are. We are all playing on an even playing field because we all have the same problem. And I don't care if you're Black, I don't care if you're white. Have you ever seen a soap opera? Every damn body on a soap opera is miserable and stressed out. But you go down to the streets of the ghetto and some of these projects, government projects, where you see more barbecuing and laughing and talking, folks smoking weed, barbecuing outside, drinking, everybody having a good time. But the people with all the money seems miserable as hell. You understand? We all have the same problem, rich, poor, Black, or white. Materialistically, we might be stressed a little different. But heart and soul, we're all the same. It don't change. You think there's no rape, robbery, molestation, and everything going on in white neighborhoods? Because the media, in that sense, has been told to propagate a lie. And that's what it is.
I'm in agreement with you.
I'm sorry.
No. That's right on time. I think too that with the truth, what you're describing with our music, when you're dealing with the blues, it is the truth. Contrast that with the hip hop lyrics that you hear these days that very seldom talk about our history, that very seldom talk about all of these ills, that we know that's going on. What do we need to do with our young people for them to understand that the blues is the truth, and it is the truth that you need to be writing about?
Watch this. I go to when I was in school. All right, we were children. We were marching, trying to get Martin Luther King holiday to be declared. We were the students for greater awareness. That's no different than back in the late 60s, early 70s. We were children. James Brown said loud, "I'm Black and I'm proud." We were them little babies running around, saying loud, "I'm Black and I'm proud." You understand? But now let's come forward a little bit. Black History Month, February. For a couple of days during February, maybe even one day, somebody's gonna do a Black History Month program. Go to a Southern Baptist church, maybe for an hour on Sunday, maybe one day during February. The Black church is going to talk about Black history. Well, what about all the other 12 months? The other 11 months of the year? They're talking about, watch this now. When they open that Bible, they're already talking about British and colonialism and all of that. They're not talking about Black history. They're talking about what was written, rewritten, coerced, and corrupted in that book. Now, I'm a spiritual man. I'm a deeply spiritual man, and I do believe in higher power, but not according to what Malcolm Shepard tell me. And in most part, not even what I think of myself. But I go with what the spirit and life has shown me. But now, if you're going by what somebody else said, I follow no man blindly, and I bow to no man. But I do know there's a reason for my existence. If you are not being taught at home, in church, at school, about the true history of who you are, but you're being told that grandstanding lie that has existed for hundreds of years, that's the only thing that you've been taught and told. You're going from the same books that call you a nigger. Back in the 70s, Merriam-Webster's definition of nigger was any person of dark-skinned race. That was in Merriam-Webster dictionary. You think about that. If I'm looking up a word, the definition of word, and that's what I found about me, then I'm going to think I'm a nigger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, I spent a lot of days in detention and suspended from school because of that word. And I didn't give a damn what color you were. You call me a nigger, you were going to find some blues for just that one time from me. I was going to break something on you, including your spirit of wanting to dance around with that word. You understand? We have to put a stop to this foolishness. Hip hop is no different than the church. A lie is a lie. Disgrace, disrespect, and defamation is the same. Do you think in the book that everybody go by, if I slap an 80-year-old woman right here, right now, do you think it's any different from slapping an 18-year-old boy? It ain't no different. A sin is a sin. Disgrace, disrespect, defamation is the same. And I don't care if you're getting it from church or wherever. Unfortunately, these people that are supposed to be the pillars of our society and strengthening and molding us to become productive members, some of these people are cutting us to the bone where we don't have a chance of standing and walking on our own to become a proud person of color or a proud white person. It ain't just in the Black community. We've all been told the same lie.
Do you think we've made strides in the Black community, in between the blues and gospel, to the extent that we don't hear too many of those arguments anymore? The blues is the devil music, and if you're hanging out, at the juke joint on Saturday night, then you can't come to this church, on Sunday morning. My own personal experience. One of my close family members, because she was a singer, the minister of our church told her that she couldn't sing in the choir. And her response to him was, "How do you think I'm able to give money on Sunday morning?" So have we made that transition yet? Are we clear with that yet?
It goes back to popularity and commercialization. Watching a documentary that Martin Scorsese did some years ago, and Bobby Rush was talking about his music. And he made it clear, this is just what you see is just to pay the bill. I'm going to my church. Okay, I'm a blues man. That stuff you see on that stage, that's gonna pay the bill. But my thing is, quite honestly, I don't think we have. I don't think we're there where we can say, okay, we're heading in the right direction. I don't think we've reached that turnaround point. I don't think we have, because everybody's worrying about their pocketbook. Everybody's worrying about their pocketbook. I've gone on gigs all over. Hell, I've gone all the way to New Orleans to play for a project and didn't come back with a dime. You understand? But you have to continue to go. When you want to talk about, for instance, the church, well, look how the preacher used to get around back in the day, on a mule, donkey, or walk, or others' generation. Now, if you want to talk about the church, for instance, let's talk about, well, Jesus didn't have 300,000 acres and 400 heads of cattle or goats. If you want to talk about the book, he survived off the generations of others. I mean, off the generosities
of others, right?
Of others, yeah. So when you start talking about Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar and all them boys, all the way back even past Reverend Ike, it was about money.
It's about money. Father Divine, yeah.
It was about the money. You can go on over to New Birth in Lithonia, Georgia. Eddie Long talking about this, that, those, and other. They want to check your earnings statements and things like that. But when you got members of your church that's right over in the same community, right across Evans Mill Road, can't keep the lights and things on, but you're expecting them to pay a certain percentage of their money to you to keep your lights on. And this member comes to your place and asks, can you help me out because my job has laid me off and I've fallen on hard times. And that person has to get a belittling lecture from your staff because they need help. You didn't lecture them about paying all that money into your organization. You understand? We think about the pocketbook. We got to have our jets. Creflo Dollar got pissed because his folks wouldn't readily just go ahead and buy him a brand new jet. He got pissed off. Wow, you can't be worrying about my soul. How you gonna worry about that? You understand? Blues is in all shapes and fashion. We can't blame one thing on our problem. Same thing with white folk. They can't blame their problem on the Hispanics coming into this country. Hell, especially when you got the wealthy using these Hispanics for slave labor. I guess they couldn't get enough off prison slavery. They got to bring in the Hispanics to get the slavery going too. Now, hold on. Now, watch this. When you want to look at who benefits from all of our struggle, the 1%ers. This ain't political. This is the truth. You want to talk about the blues? Let's talk about the truth. The 1%ers benefit from all of it. If I lose my job and I lose my property, who runs those banks? Who runs the insurance company? Who runs it? Who runs Wall Street? You really think because I invested $1 million on Wall Street and the stock market crashed, you think that money disappears in outer space? That money in somebody's pocket?
It goes somewhere.
It goes. My point is, when you want to talk about this thing, you got to talk about the truth. Let's not try to sugarcoat it. Let's not act like when you defecate in that toilet, it's just going to go out into nowhere land. It's got to come somewhere. It got to come back somewhere. It ain't going nowhere. But my point is, I don't think we are heading in the right direction yet. We hadn't reached that point of turnaround yet because we're still teaching the same foolishness. Nobody is holding the church. No one's holding the church accountable for what they're doing. No one's holding the 1%ers accountable. No one's holding these political figures who are being paid and has the trust of the community to stand up for them. Especially when these people commit these heinous crimes and offenses, if they go to jail at all, they go into some country club. Now, let me give you an example. My mother, someone wrote a check from one of my mother's old accounts. This is a true story. They wrote a check from one of her old accounts that she didn't use anymore. They wrote a $9 check to a store. That check bounced, of course, because the account had been closed. The police knew my mother, picked her up off the street when she walked from her job back home and took her to the jail. All right? Took her to jail for a $9 check. These people have been robbing and raping the financial system for decades and not served 1 second of time. This political figure steals millions of dollars and not served 1 ounce of time. You take this thing about the children in the school and how this one black lady, homeless black woman, simply registered her child into a school that was convenient for where she was and was going to jail. This white woman did the same thing, intentionally paid money to get her child in school. And they gave her a pat on the wrist and a few weeks in jail. Of course, living in the laps of luxury. You tell me if we're going in the right direction or not. Young white boy in Texas killed several people, drinking and driving, underage drinking and driving, happened a couple of times. They says he was affluent. He didn't know any different. So does that mean because I grew up raggedy, broke and poor, abused and neglected and abandoned, it gives me a right to kill somebody because that's all I've ever seen? It gives me a right to go cut a man's throat because I didn't know any different. I've been raised in that all my life. The hell no, I'm going to jail. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, the point I think that we're getting to in terms of the blues music and the lyrics, that it's those kind of things that we should keep in the forefront in the music, because we're not there yet. I fully agree with you that we haven't arrived where there's a merger and understanding between blues and gospel and those two leadership groups. The inequities are still here. We see it every day. And that's what the blues has been talking about since its inception. Injustice, inequality, and I guess the next step would be what does the blues say about the solution?
That always goes back to when B.B. King says, "Why I sing the blues."
Yeah.
I laid in the ghetto flat, cold and numb. I heard the rats tell the big bug to get a roaches song. You understand? We still got to get there. We still got to get there. But we sing the blues not necessarily because we are sad and broke down, but also because we're happy. We sing the blues because that's the spirit of us. Sometimes you just want to yell and shout. Sometimes you just want to lay down and go to sleep. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. I don't know if I answered your question then.
Yeah. I think we're along the same philosophy. Let me take a break here for just a second. Savannah, do we have enough footage?
The switch. What's his name?
I think my battery might be about to die.
Yeah, I'm about to say we on 8%. Is it possible to switch if she has it recorded, can we switch to another device and call back the call?
How much time do we have, Savannah?
We have at least 35 minutes. We have enough time.
Okay, we already have enough. So, Jock, I would like to end this interview with you giving us Jock's philosophy on the blues and where you think it needs to be headed, in terms of addressing these social inequities.
I think that if you want to start from the top, we need to give our political figures a new agenda. If we don't start talking about togetherness and bridging the gap between the rich and the poor in a sincere manner, not just because the TV cameras are rolling, and holding those people accountable for standing up to that. If you are putting a family in a government assisted living arrangement, that should be temporary, but give that person an opportunity to come up out of that. But because, unfortunately, a lot of times because you're poor, black or white, but unfortunately in this country, mostly because you're black, you've not been given a fair opportunity to come up. Hold those people accountable that runs that project and those people that are given that assistance. Hold people accountable. But when you think about how much money is made off crime, the law enforcement officials that should be governing it, and the people that are committing the crime, they all make money off crime. Do you think they're in a big rush for it to stop? This man got 18 years on the force, and all of a sudden, crime is at an all-time low. They don't have a use for him. You think he ain't gonna be pissed off? You understand? Same thing up top. When my constituents who gonna put $2 billion in my account, if I go by what they want done, do you think that person's gonna stand by what the law says, or that person gonna take that $2 billion and do what he can to slide over to his buddy's side of town? Everybody needs to be held accountable from the top to the bottom. You wanna help this country and give us some good blues to sing, then fix those problems. But ain't nobody talking about that because that makes too much sense. That's too much like, okay, if I plant a seed and water and nurture, it's gonna grow. But I don't want to get my damn hands dirty. Are you crazy? I just paid $40,000 for that damn truck. You think I'm gonna put some bricks and dirt back there? Ain't nobody talking about that. But in all of the blues, they still talking about the blues. When you tell me, I don't want no bologna sandwich fishing, I want to take me some caviar and crackers. Hell, that's the blues to me.
Mm-hmm.
To me it is. I don't know salty ass caviar. Give me a bologna sandwich and a Pepsi or a cold beer.
I hear you. Well,
I'm sorry.
That's
where the problem starts. We got to start holding people accountable. We have to hold our public officials accountable. Stop putting them up in luxury hotels and calling it prison. Stop putting these people who bounced a $9 check in jail. Listen, how you gonna take care of a child when you got that child's daddy in jail for failure to pay child support? The man most likely ain't never got a fair chance to earn a good living. He's got to scrape it however he can. But now, how is that benefiting that child if his father's in jail?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? We got to fix this. That's just one little example of the big problem.
Well, I think you said it all. We got to fix this. And it sounds like the name of a blues song to me. Jock, it has been wonderful spending this time with you. I look forward to seeing you again in person. And when this pandemic is over, all of us getting back together and playing some good blues, man. I thank you, my brother, and I love you.
Man, love you too. Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Mississippi, Central Mississippi Blues Society. let's take it down slow. Keep him safe. Oh, boy. Oh, let's get on down deep in Mississippi. Let's sweat on that dusty road a little bit and make it muddy. Where would it, Maestro?